I just want to say that the content we're going to be looking at today is going to be pretty heavy. We're going to be discussing library ethics, morals, and values. We're going to be looking at things like such as job satisfaction, low morale, and a negative workplace. This session is going to be recorded, so if you feel like you need to take a moment of self-care, please do so. I put my contact information on the screen. So if you want to reach out after the presentation for any follow-up questions, or you want to connect and collaborate on a presentation, I'm more than happy to do either. We're going to be doing some interactive activities. So if you haven't done so already, if you want to open up your chat box, we're going to be doing some chat activities there. We're also going to be looking at the concept of moral injury and its significance for well-being. I really want people to feel like they're not the only ones that feel this way. There's a reason, and now you have keywords in order to use in your literature search. And then lastly, I really want to talk about this idea of next steps in this journey. And I really do think it's a journey. It's not something that's just one and done. It's going to be happening over a long period of time. I want to also bring up this idea that in a lot of ways, the topics that we're discussing, ignorance is bliss for a lot of people. There's physical and emotional barriers that keep people from really looking at these concepts and interacting with them. And then I think that managers and administrators often aren't aware of the everyday workplace realities. I know for myself, a lot of things happen at nights and on the weekends, and a lot of people don't see these things happening. And so they're just not aware that these issues are present in our workplaces. For me, when I think about this topic, I think about library work as a race, class, gender, age, ability, and sexuality issue. We're bringing all these different identities into the workplace, and it really does inform how we interact with not only ourselves, but patrons and other individuals in the building. So in this question of moral injury, I really want to look at what are our library's morals, values, and beliefs. And for me, this question boils down to three different kind of aspects. So what are our professional or personal morals, beliefs, and values? What values do our communities care about? And also, how does staff navigate the difference? And so I think that last one is really the heart of moral injury. How are we able to navigate what we say we do and what actually happens? So looking at ALA's core values of librarianship, you can see here in the black, the top five are the current five values. The ones in the red are the previous values. This change happened recently in, I believe, January, February of this year, so pretty recent. So they took the 12 and condensed it down to five. And so the five current values are access, equity, intellectual freedom and privacy, the public good, and sustainability. I also want to bring up ALA's code of ethics. And so some of the words that jump out to me are words such as equitable, intellectual freedom, privacy and confidentiality, respect, fairness, and good faith. Do not allow our personal beliefs to interfere, the strive for excellence, and the inherent dignity and rights of every person. We also have the freedom to read statement. So this statement's over 70 years old, and it says, "We trust the people of this nation to make their own decisions about what they read and believe." So for our first chat box activity, if you want to crack that open, post what are your top library beliefs and or values. Again, in the chat box, post some of what are your top library beliefs and or values. All right, we have some responses rolling in. All of them, which I really love. We'll give it about another 20 seconds. Educational lifelong learning, all three in a row right there. So I think in a lot of ways, I think for us as academics, definitely that education and lifelong learning are definitely things that we talk about. I know for me, I think about things like access, especially with the censorship happening, intellectual freedom as people in education. Um, and I think I really like the idea of social responsibility, and, really thinking about our workers and kind of helping them, uh, have the best careers that they can. I see some other ones in diversity. All right, so perfect. So in this section, I wanted to look at some of the library trends in research, and I want to look at how these trends might influence moral injury. And there's a connection to it, and we'll take a look in the next section. So this first diagram you can see says, please identify your number one dissatisfaction. Again, this is from Library Journal and School Library Journal's job satisfaction survey. And so you can see here, some of the dissatisfactions include low salary, not enough staff, conflicts with administrators and managers, inadequate budget, lack of respect, and then performing non-library related tasks. The second one's also, again, from Library Journal. It says, how satisfied are you with your current job? And so this one is from 2022, which is the most recent year, in comparison to a decade before in 2012. And so you can see here in the middle, academic library individuals are the least satisfied out of the three groups. And the drop is about 14%. And then this third one says, would you choose this career again? And so again, academic libraries are here in the middle. They're the least, they would not choose the career again at 32%. And so looking at some of the top reasons for resignation, you can see some of the stuff we've already been talking about. This one's from McKinsey and Company. And so the biggest one is lack of career development, inadequate compensation, uncaring and uninspiring leaders, lack of meaningful work, unsustainable work expectations, lack of flexibility, non-inclusive and not welcoming. So all those things that we've been talking about as some of the values that we really do care about. And I think that these types of things really dovetail nice into Katrina Davis Kendrick's work. So she has been studying low morale. So she's looked at low morale in academic librarians, public librarians. They have been, she's been looking at it for BIPOC librarians. And so she found a lot of the same kind of things. So that lack of respect, poor work-life balance as causes of moral injury. Or sorry, low morale, I should say. And so I think in a lot of ways, this has created a feeling of being pushed out. So people feel pushed out of their organizations. They don't feel seen or heard, and they're not really being pulled to new opportunities. So when they leave, they're leaving just because they don't like it, not because they feel like they're going to something better. People don't feel seen or appreciated nowadays. There's a lack of career development in a lot of our organizations. For most people to move up in the career ladder means to go into management. Um, and so the take-home message for me oftentimes is you can be passionate about librarianship and learning, but you don't have to remain in toxic environments. And I know that sounds easy to do, but there's a lot of real reality of when people leave an organization, they often have to move either across the state, and there's a financial hit that they take too by leaving. I also wanted to look at the urban library trauma study. So 68% of people have experienced violent or aggressive behavior from patrons. 85% have experienced trauma in the workplace and shared it with others. And 83% have received support from another member of staff. And so these stats are really, I think, eye-opening to the reality of what a lot of people are experiencing. And so I think for me, what this signifies is that a lot of people don't feel like they're trained or qualified to assist. We're not social workers, we're not accountants, we're not medical personnel. We don't have those skills to help people in the way that they really would for us to help them. I think in a lot of ways it creates this feeling of to help or not to help. We have policies and procedures in place that keep us safe and our patrons safe. But sometimes we really do feel like we want to transcend them. Some of the interactions we have with people can be emotionally draining and time consuming. We may only hear a 5-minute story, but then we think about this person for the rest of the day, if not weeks, if not months later on. And we wonder, is that person physically safe? Are they happy? Did they get what they needed? I think that there's a lot of safety and health concerns. We have high inflation across the country, homelessness, the opioid crisis, a lot of people experiencing mental distress. And so the reality is that we're calling for emergency assistance more often than we ever have, it seems. So we're calling for medical assistance, for campus security, police in some cases, social workers if you have one in the building, in order to come in and help handle the situation. And I also wanted to look at Ajatshatru. She coined the term vocational awe. And so it's this thought that libraries are inherently good and sacred and therefore beyond critique. And so in some ways, if we're not able to critique a system, if we're not able to give constructive criticism or feedback, it really does make it hard. And those individuals who often raise their hand and bring up these issues are often marginalized, dismissed, or retaliated against. And so that's not a great system either. I also think that there's a lot of demoralization in our profession. And so policies and practices are really hindering workers from upholding their core values in the organizations. And so I think that a lot of people are really wanting to talk about the flat budgets or the understaffing or EDI issues, and they don't feel like they can talk about them. And this has also created a lack of meaningful change. And so it's really hard to move forward when we're not willing to acknowledge what's happening. And I think people are really feeling disconnected from their passions. So a lot of us came into librarianship because we're passionate about learning or intellectual freedom or helping people. And these policies and procedures really keep us from doing that. I also looked at this concept of languishing. So it's this absence of diagnosable mental health conditions. I really think about it as this idea of like, I feel blah. Nothing's really good. Nothing's really bad. I don't really feel great, but it's not terrible. And so it's this feeling of being stuck or empty, a lack of motivation. I've also been looking at loneliness. You might have seen the headline. The US Surgeon General says that loneliness is just as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
And so national and international studies, both personal and professional, say that most of us, about 40 to 70% of us, are at least a little bit lonely, and some of us a lot lonely. We also have a lot of grief in our organizations. So it's this anguish experience after a significant loss. And so we might think of things like the COVID-19 pandemic. We might think of the great reorg, so a lot of people leaving their positions. So thinking about friends or mentors who leave organizations and the gap it creates. And in the case of COVID-19, people literally died and left the holes in our organization. And we think about the mentors who may have left, going for a new job or retirement. We also have a lot of reorgs and layoffs in my last 12 years of working, I've been through 4 reorgs in my own and different organizations I've worked at. And I'm guessing most of you have experienced a reorg too. Really thinking about the past or the future and really worried about what that might look like. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up in this section was this looking at the idea of anger. So anger is a basic human emotion and it's experienced by all people. And so I think that people are really angry nowadays and they want to push back against resilience narratives, understaffing, and lack of pay. And I think at its most positive, it can be a catalyst for identifying and addressing underlying issues and systemic problems in our workplaces. So what I find often is that our jobs provide more than a paycheck. They offer us a sense of growth, purpose, and community. We came into this because we were passionate individuals. And for a lot of us, who we are is what we do. And when the organization doesn't feel great, it really does affect our self-esteem and our identity. So looking at moral injury, you've probably seen it, but you didn't have a name for it. And so the most simplified definition I found is a betrayal of an individual's personal or professional beliefs or values by authority figures, coworkers, users, and workplaces. So this term was coined right after the Vietnam War by Jonathan Shea and Camilo Macbica, and also through the work of the psychologists at the Veterans Administration. So they found that when soldiers came back from the Vietnam War, they were experiencing something that was closely related to PTSD and other kind of things, but they wanted to look at how people's values were really impacted. And so looking at some of the emotions of moral injury, we have things like anger, guilt, shame, loss, powerlessness, mistrustful. And so if you're experiencing any of these kind of emotions on the screen, it might be a good indication that you're also experiencing moral injury in your own workplace. So there's 3 different types of moral injury. It's doing something that goes against your own beliefs, failing to get involved or not doing enough. And then the last one is witnessing others being treated poorly. And so looking at these 3, you really see that it's about, you doing something, you not getting involved, and then you also witnessing it. And so it covers a wide bevy of ground here. So you might be asking yourself, well, how is this different from burnout or low morale or trauma or depression? I think in a lot of ways, all of these are really interrelated and they share a lot of similarities to moral injury. The way that I've heard moral injury expressed is it really goes down to your soul level. You really feel it in your chest. You feel it deep down in your soul. So I have 2 older brothers. And so some of the things that they told me from childhood have stayed with me, decades later. And I still think about them every so often. And I think that's really what moral injury is. You see something, you experience something, you witness something, and then you just can't get it out of your head. And it just stays with you and it lingers. And so I wanted to bring up an example. So I used to work at the Denver's Auraria campus. So it's in downtown Denver, Colorado. And so we recently celebrated our 50th anniversary at the Auraria campus. And 50 years ago, this place was once a thriving neighborhood. And so we call the people who were there 50 years ago displaced Aurarians. And what we really mean is that they were forcibly kicked out of the neighborhood in order for us to build the campus. And so when we think about moral injury, it's not about things that happen today. It could be a historical legacy of the systems that we belong to, and how they really inform the way that we treat not only the community members in our interactions with them, but also how we think about our own histories and legacies of institutional inequalities and other things. One of my soapbox issues is this the idea of professionalism, which is one of our ALA core values. And so really thinking about when we say we're professionals, we think about a good salary and professional development. And so looking at some of the statistics in terms of wage, you can see here librarians make about $62,000 a year, while paraprofessionals make about $46,000, so about a $16,000 difference. These salaries here would be really good for Colorado, really high. Um, and I know that it's different for every type of location and library, and also whether or not you're unionized. That really does set the salary standard. So one of the nice things about Colorado is that we have to post a salary range for every position, which is really great. So you can see here, these are for academic librarians who hold an MLIS degree. Some of them are manager positions, some of them aren't. So you can see here at the top, 45 to 53 for Naropa University, which is in a suburb of Denver, a very wealthy suburb of Denver, 45 to 53. And then if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we have 72,000 for University of Denver Access Services Manager, again, with an MLIS degree. And so we have the whole kind of gambit of different positions here in Colorado in the Metro Front Range of the different ones that are happening. And you can see it's about a $20,000 difference in salary for them. And so I think that in a lot of ways, these individuals, I'm sure, work very hard at what they do. They provide good service, but their salaries are very different from each other all across the board. And so I think in a lot of ways, this creates a vicious cycle of silence. People are discouraged about talking about their negative experiences. I hear often people talk about, let's keep it positive. Let's think about what we can do, not what we can't do. And I think in a lot of ways, it's to keep this illusion that it's rare, it's a relic or confined to the past. These things don't happen because we don't talk about them. We also want to prioritize the comfort of others. In some ways, it could be administrators and managers want to prioritize their own comfort. We also want to prioritize the comfort of coworkers sometimes. So we don't want colleagues to think bad about themselves for EDI issues or for making more money. And one of the things I've heard said to full-time staff is your pay may be low, but at least you have healthcare and tuition assistance. So really this idea that we want people to kind of think more broad about it. And yet at the same time, the people who are in these lower paying jobs, often paraprofessionals, have to go to food banks or work a second job in order to make ends meet. And so what does that say about our profession when we can't talk about professionalism? So that was a lot. Why don't we take a quick breath here? So breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And really take a moment to scan your body and see if there's any tension. Maybe it's in your face or in your chest. So for me, when I give this presentation, it really does bring up a lot of feelings of sadness, anger, and mistrust. I'm thinking about all these bigger issues that happen in our workplaces, from pay transparency to compensation to workload. I'm also thinking about the diversity and equity inclusions that really keep people in positions such as these. I really question, what is the manager or administrator's roles or responsibilities to enact change? Why can't we make change today? For some of you, you may be going through funding or budget cuts, and that really is weighing down on you. I think people don't feel heard or seen in our workplaces, and that really creates problems for job satisfaction and job retention. You may be feeling too many thoughts or too little that you don't want to even think about it. And you may be questioning where you want to go from here, or if there even is a possibility to go somewhere in a positive direction. So for our next chat box activity, if you want to crack open the chat box right now, I want us to think about what future do you want to create or what emotion do you want to feel? Again, in the chat box, what future do you want to create and or what emotion do you want to feel? So I'm seeing this idea of community. I want to feel connected and supported. I would like to feel hopeful. We'll give it about another 30 seconds here. More support, mutual appreciation. Yeah, I think these are all things that I think we all want. We want people to be happy. We want people to feel like they matter and that they want to come to work every day and really get what they need. So I'm seeing in the chat box respect and trust also. And so for me, when I think about this issue, I really do think that there is hope. And the most simplified definition of hope I found is a will and a way. So a belief that things can get better and a game plan to get us there. And so a belief without a game plan is toxic positivity. And so we're going to need both. It's also going to require us to acknowledge that there's an uneven path in this way forward and that it's all right to be upset with an unjust world. Things happen, COVID happened, layoffs happened. And so we can be upset with what has happened in the past, and it's all right to honor being upset. I think for a lot of us, we're going to have to really prioritize our physical, emotional, and financial health, really thinking about the things that matter to us and really prioritizing those. We can't give to others if we don't have anything left in the gas tank. We're also going to have to look at systems that advantage some identity and disadvantage others. Higher education and librarianship is built on a lot of inequalities in the workplaces and in our own educational systems. A lot of the problems that we're seeing in librarianship are systemic, meaning that they're complex and that they're really interconnected with a lot of other kind of issues. And so it's really hard to solve one without solving a whole bunch of other ones. And so that there's a lot of challenges and opportunities that are unique to every institution, and that we're really going to have to look at that to make sure that we're really focusing on what's good for each individual institution. Every institution has a different budget, a different climate, a different set of workers and skills. And so we really have to look at individualized situations instead of a one-step all process. And for me, I really like this word transmutation. So it's the act or process of changing something completely, especially into something different. And so thinking about when we think about moral injury, I think for a lot of us, we're thinking we're going to have to change the whole system. The system has a lot of difficulties in it, and it's only by changing a good chunk of it that we're able to create meaningful change. And so what that looks like is that we're going to have leadership or change at all these different levels. So at an individual level, it's going to require each of us to give some awareness to the issue, bring up the issue in staff meetings, talk about it with our coworkers, and really raise the awareness of what's happening in the building. At a departmental level, we're going to have to keep each other accountable. So keeping each other accountable on EDI issues, on people taking vacation, on mental health and wellness. At an organizational level, we're going to have to think about creating policies and procedures that keep people safe and happy and able to do their job. We're also going to have to look at things such as trust and respect at these levels and really infusing it through the whole organization. For a lot of us, our libraries are also part of a larger institution, whether it be our colleges or our municipalities. And so really creating change at that larger level too. And then lastly, we're also going to think about the societal level, so changing things where we live and the communities that we live in. If we were to affect change on any of these levels and not do it on any of the others, then all the other levels would cancel it out. We can have a supportive boss, but without a supportive institution, it really does create difficulties. And so we're going to have to change it on all these different levels all at once in order to create effective change. So the solutions that I'm thinking about, we're really going to focus on those core essentials. So trust, respect, psychological safety, better communication, mutual decision making. And so without these, we're not able to create, to effectuate change that's more difficult and more complex. We really do have to focus on the basics. For a lot of people, we might be thinking about what is performative change and what is meaningful change. And for me, I really do feel that a lot of times change that's complex and difficult often takes about 5 to 7 years. And so because it takes so long, a lot of the change that we're seeing might seem performative, but it's just on a much longer timeline. It's going to require organizations and managers to focus on care as a both a short-term and long-term solution, along with capacity building. People are really burned out right now. People really feel hurt. And so we're going to focus on care. And I think all of us really want some progress. So also thinking about capacity building, how are we able to do it? And for a lot of people, I think, how long do people want to wait in an organization? Again, I said a lot of change often takes about 5 to 7 years in my experience. And so do people feel like they want to stay 5 to 7 years in the organizations that they're at based on the current conditions, knowing that it's going to take, again, at a minimum, 5 to 7 years? I think managers are really stuck in this middle ground, not administrators, not staff. And so they occupy this middle piece. They really wonder when can they use their personal power to push back against unreasonable requests. And I think for managers, they're also thinking about how do they make progress when people are so burned out? So people don't have any left in the gas tank, and how do they push them farther to create more change? I think that managers oftentimes want to focus on the whole person. They want to suggest therapy or therapeutic interventions, but they're only legally can focus on tasks, which make it really difficult. And I think for managers and even the workers themselves is this idea of how do we bring our whole selves to work? How do we bring this authenticity and this love and joy to the workplace, each of us individually? I think it's going to require us to find allies, so individuals, organizations, institutions that share our common interests. And so it's really about building awareness and taking a collective action in order to make change. I'm going to put a copy of the slides at the end of the presentation into the chat, but this is a YouTube video, the one in blue, about unions. It's from Emily Drabinski, who is the current ALA president, and Kelly McElroy. And so if you're really curious about what unions are and how they work in librarianship, it's a really great overview of that process. And one of the final things I want to leave people with is that each of us has the ability to effectuate change in our organizations. We have the ability to talk about these things. We have the ability to create change. And so don't feel like because you're at the lowest rung of the ladder, you can create change in organizations. I invite you to take what you learned today and really take it and share it with other people and use it as a tool in order to share some of these thoughts that we talked about today. I put a copy of the slides in the chat for you to have, for you to do that. I also created a moral injury music playlist. Again, you can find the link in the chat or in the presentation. But I really wanted to think about this idea that we really connect our lives oftentimes through music. And so I picked songs that really talk about kind of like the loneliness or heartbreak or despair of what people are feeling. And then I also put in a lot of happy songs. So songs that really make me think that there is change and that we can effectuate change. And a lot of them happen to be, I think, love songs. I think all of us kind of feel that heartbreak sometimes when we do our work. We don't feel appreciated or seen or trusted. And also this idea that we have this immense joy and passion for our work. So I'm going to open up the floor to a question and answer.